Hi, and a huge welcome to the Transcending and Succeed show. I'm your host, Dawn Livingston, and today I have a very special guest. Her name is Faith Echo, and she has escaped a narcissistic relationship and is now a trauma-informed recovery coach, specialising in post-narcissistic stress disorder, which I didn't even know was a thing, but we're going to talk about that. So she's here to tell us her story and how she turned her life around. So welcome to the show, Faith.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's lovely to have you. So firstly, could you tell us your story and your light bulb moment when you became aware of what was truly happening?
So I was in a relationship, a 4-year relationship with a malignant narcissist, and I escaped at 2 a.m. in the morning one night. And I say escape because that's the only way usually you can break up with narcissists. So at the beginning, he was just the man of my dreams. He was so charming and loving and kept saying that I was his person and he wanted to start a family. And so we had a baby together. And for like the first year, he was just so hands-on, like helped me bathe the baby with the groceries and the cleaning. And we were sort of like a well-oiled factory. And then things started to slowly change, and like my opinions no longer mattered. In fact, if I gave my opinion, I was given the cold shoulder, silent treatment, or he would go into a flying rage and just leave the room. And he also became controlling to the point where it wasn't worth me going out with my friends anymore because of his rage or the silent treatment, and things like going out to the nail salon or the gym, or if I was allowed to go out, I had to be constantly in touch with him and respond to his texts immediately. And if I didn't, there was just hell to pay. He needed constant adoration and praise and his victory laps whenever he made a sale. And he then started degrading me, like saying horribly abusive things. I was like the frog in boiling water that slowly my sense of self just disappeared. I no longer knew who I was. I was like so mentally, emotionally, and physically hijacked by this guy that I couldn't be there to show up for my sons. And finally, one day, I was talking to a friend because I had heard the word narcissist thrown out there all the time. And narcissists are classified as very egocentric, manipulative, very controlling. And they put recorders on people, trackers on people, and so I didn't realize all this was happening to me until my friends started to tell me about narcissistic personality disorder. So I just started to do as much research as possible. Knowledge is power. So I scoured the internets and I listened to blogs and I Googled it. And one day I was Googling it on my phone and it just sounded like it was completely describing my ex, describing the abuse that I was going through psychologically, mentally, emotionally, financially. So I just thought, oh my gosh, this is so much worse than people know. And it took me about 2 years to really understand that the man I loved never actually existed. I mean, in public, he was this amazing guy and just chivalrous. And as soon as we came home, the mask would come off and he was just a monster. It was like Jekyll and Hyde, because sometimes he could be amazing and sometimes he was just get out of my house and sometimes I want to marry you. And it was just so much to process. He would gaslight me. He would make me feel like I was going crazy. Like if I left my phone in one room and I went to another room and came back, my phone would be gone. And I'd ask him, have you seen my phone? And he says no. So I do another search and come back, and the phone was exactly where I had originally left it. And he would just look at me and say, man, you're really becoming unhinged. Like, you need mental help. And the screaming got more and more closer and closer together. And it started to affect my young son, who developed a stutter and reverted to bedwetting and was always asking me why I was crying, why I was sad. And so I started to get to the point where I knew it was really affecting my son. And then my ex started to get physical one night, and I was able to duck just in time before he hit me. So I ran into the bathroom with my cell phone, and he was able to control my cell phone. So he shut off my service, and he could also read my emails, see who was calling. He could read my texts. He put a GPS tracker on my car, recordings all over the house. So when he went down to the basement, I ran out of the bathroom to go get my car keys, and they were hidden. So it just more and more, I started to see I needed to get out. And then one night in particular, he said I was not allowed to sleep in the bedroom. I was no longer welcome there. I had to sleep upstairs. So I went upstairs, I closed the door, and he came up and knocked, and I said, please leave me alone. Found a way to open the door. He said, I just want to let you know that I'm taking our son away tomorrow. And I said, where? And he would not tell me. And he said, you're just mentally unfit. It's time that you lose custody of your son. So that was the defining moment. I said, nope. I called my friend and I said, can you please come get me at 2 a.m. when we know that he's asleep? And when I see you pull into the driveway, turn your headlights off so I know it's you, and just run with my son and get in. So I did. I waited there, rocking my son in the rocking chair with my eyes like, laser focused on the street, terrified. I've never been so scared in my life. So I saw her pull up. I ran and I got my son, wrapped him in his blanket, and just ran. And the next morning I called my lawyer because he had advised me. He said, if you feel at all threatened or your son, you need to leave. So he was able to do an emergency ex parte, meaning I had full custody for the moment, and he was able to file a restraining order, which was absolutely probably saved our lives.
Yeah. Wow. And sorry you went through that experience. My next question was actually going to be asking you about, to explain the narcissistic personality disorder and define the characteristics, but I think you've listed quite a lot of them there. I would like to maybe add another one in and get your opinion on it, and that's projection. Now, my ex was pretty much like that, maybe not quite as much as you had experienced, but there was a lot of projection going on. I now understand this, that they will project their crimes onto you to make you feel bad so that they don't have to suffer the guilt from it. So therefore you take that guilt on and feeling really bad as to why he thinks you're doing something like that when you're not. So would you agree with that? Projection is something that you've got to look out for?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If they're the ones cheating, they're going to accuse you of cheating. All of their inner demons and things that they cannot process. They have to put it on to somebody else. And to your point, yes, they don't want to feel guilty. They never want to take the blame for
Yeah.
anything.
Never.
No,
Mm-hmm.
no. And it makes you feel like you're going crazy. I mean, at least it did for me. And
Oh no, it does. It made me feel exactly the same. And the words you used earlier was, Jekyll and Hyde.
mhm,
And that was exactly right because, people outside of our house couldn't understand why I was feeling the way I was because he's such a nice guy.
mhm,
But I mean, it was a flick of a switch.
uh-huh,
When there was anybody else in our company, he was just the nicest of the nicest people.
mhm,
And, totally the opposite when there was nobody around to see it. So, yeah, people need to be very much aware of that.
yes,
So,
yeah.
in your experience, then, how does NPD manifest within the context of an abusive relationship? How would that manifest?
Well, narcissists have very, very fragile egos, and they were raised in neglected households, and they have no self-esteem. So they take it out a lot on their partners, and it turns psychologically, emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically abusive. Um, and then sometimes their partners, a lot of the times, are empaths. So they want to be with this person. They think they can save them. They think they can fix them. They think that they themselves are broken and that nobody else will ever want them. So it's kind of like the perfect storm, these types of personalities that come together.
Well, I have to agree with that because I felt when I met him that I knew exactly what he was like, or I knew a little bit about what he was like. And to me, it was, I can help him. I just feel I can help him.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my mentality at the time. Whereas now I'm fully on board with understanding that it's not my place, to help somebody unless they want some help. They are 100% entitled to be where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you can be free of it is to leave that person, not to try and change them because your only responsibility is to change yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to change someone else. And the only way really is to get yourself out of there. Yeah.
Absolutely, especially if you have children. Like people
Yes.
a lot of times stay for the kids. No, you need to leave.
I did for a while, and but that was something that was thrown on me. You're breaking up a happy home, and these kids are going to be, they're going to be from a broken home. I would much rather have had, two separate kind of homes for the kids, but have them in a happy environment because our environment wasn't happy,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly as soon as that happened, it was so much better, so much more relief on both sides. I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. It took me a long time, I must admit.
Yeah, it's
So
hard.
then, can you explain what coercive control entails and its role in manipulative relationships? Coercive control.
So coercive control is where the victims, every aspect of their life is controlled by their abuser. They need to know where they're going, who they're going with, what time they'll be back, and it's all about emotional, psychological, physical abuse.
Mhm.
And its purpose is to keep the victims trapped and totally erode their self-esteem and think that they can't do better. And in my opinion, I think coercive control, so emotional, psychological, mental abuse, is worse than physical, because physical, I mean, I'm not saying physical is good, but like a broken bone will heal, or like a cut will scab over and then go away. But the psychological and mental damage is like there's scars we carry inside of us for life, and they
Yeah,
really truly self erode our self esteem. And actually, it can literally change the neurons in your brain. They start to fire and wire differently, and you're just so full of cortisol all the time and hypervigilant. And healing is possible, but it does take a long time and a lot of processing these deep emotions.
yeah. I mean, it's trauma, isn't it? It's shock and
Exactly.
it's trauma. That's how I would define it. And I know the physical wounds can heal, but yeah, the emotional and the mental effects of that physical abuse, need to be addressed at the same time. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good point. Yeah.
Now, when we had our first chat a little while ago, you were talking about Jennifer's Law.
Yeah.
So can you explain to us what that is? Because I had never heard of it, and I know there'll be a lot of viewers that don't understand what Jennifer's Law is. So could you explain that to us?
Absolutely. So it's named in honor of two Jennifers, Jennifer Dulos and Jennifer Magnano. So Jennifer Dulos kept going to the police that she was terrified of her husband, that she thought he was going to kill her, do something to her, but nobody believed her because it was all psychological, mental, and you can't prove that. Like, you can't show that to anybody.
Yeah,
So
there's no bruises.
nobody sees it and nobody would believe it unless they're actually in the situation. So Jennifer went missing and she was actually just declared dead. She was missing for years, and her husband, Fotis Dulos, was charged with her murder, and he actually ended up killing himself. And then another woman, Jennifer Magnano, she was forced to testify against her abuser in court, and he ended up coming back and shooting her in front of her two children and then killing himself as well. So these were both examples of coercive control. And so the law passed, this law back in October of 2021 to include coercive control in the definition of domestic violence, and their women will be able to get restraining orders. So that's an amazing step towards fighting this and hopefully preventing future unnecessary travesties. Like, it's tragic, and people need to understand that domestic violence is not just physical.
Okay, so people, if they need to, they can get a restraining order based on Jennifer's Law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can you explain to the viewers how they would go about getting that restraining order?
First of all, leave. If you feel threatened, immediately leave. If you are okay for the moment, then try to make your escape like quietly and safely. But in either case, you can go to the courthouse and explain to the marshals, I feel threatened. This is what's happened. And more times out of not, those restraining orders are granted.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think now is probably a good time if we could just have a quick break. Stick around though, because Faith has a fun fact that she's going to tell us about herself. So she'll tell us about that just in a few seconds. We'll be right back.
Holy Hydrogen introduces the most powerful health enhancement device in the world, the Lord's Hydrofix Premium Edition. Studies have shown therapeutic potential for cancer, diabetes, digestive and heart issues, and essentially every organ and system in the body. Visit holyhydrogen.com to see the latest technology that elevates your immune system and fights inflammation. This isn't medical advice, but if you have any health concerns, I strongly recommend that you learn more about hydrogen. Visit holyhydrogen.com to learn more about this groundbreaking gold standard hydrogen generator that for a reasonable price creates therapeutic quality hydrogen gas for inhalation and hydrogen infused water for consumption. Remember, holyhydrogen.com.
And welcome back to Transcending and Succeed show. And we are talking about transcending narcissistic abuse with the very beautiful Faith Echo. Mm-hmm. And before the break, we were talking about all kinds of, or Faith's definition of narcissistic disorder. But Faith, let's start off. Now, you have a fun fact to tell us about you. Go ahead.
So it's kind of ridiculous, but I literally am the clumsiest person you probably will ever meet. Like tripping over things, or like just walking into a door, or my son just laughs every time now. Like he doesn't get nervous anymore. Mom, are you okay? He just laughs and like rolls his eyes. And it's like an ongoing joke in my family because they're like, watch out for that puddle, Monique, you know?
Uh-huh. Well, I think you and I are on the same page. I have my favourite thing to trip over is fresh air. I do that quite a bit.
It's so funny.
It is. Okay. Okay, so you have written a book that's called Rising from Ashes, a testament of strength and survival after narcissistic abuse. So tell us what inspired that, and if you could walk us through the stages of your book.
So I definitely knew that I needed to help other people. I wanted to be the voice for people who are going through the same narcissistic abuse and let them know that they're not alone. Let them know that there is a way out. These are the resources, that I'm living proof that I have survived and healed, and I'm the happiest and healthiest I've ever been in my entire life. So I take you through experiences that I went through, and I take you through different resources and things that I found helped me, because what really, really helped me heal was listening to other people's stories, because it's very, very, very validating, and to educate people on the cycles of abuse, because it happens so subtly that you don't know what's going on. The first stage is the love bombing stage, where your narcissist just wines you and dines you and makes you feel like the most important person in the world and loves you, and future faking, like we're going to live together happily, we're each other's person, and then slowly they start to devalue you. Like they go from loving and adoring you to, you're the worst person in the world, you're a loser, you're not going to amount to anything, like just really, really puts you down, destroys your self-esteem. You start to believe these toxic thoughts because it's happening so slowly that you're not even aware of what's happening. Mm-hmm. And then the next stage is the discard phase, where they're done with you, you're out of their life, you're no longer of service to them. So they move on to the new supply, because they can't be alone. They always need that adoration from the new person and the newest, shiniest supply. And then they get bored of that person. So they try to come back to you and hoover you. So the name comes from the vacuum hoover. Mm-hmm. They try to suck you back in. I've changed. I've seen the light. I don't want to be with anybody else. And the whole cycle continues, and it never ends. It only gets absolutely worse, because there is no cure for narcissism.
Yeah, and I did experience that, after I had said I wanted a divorce, I wanted to break up, I wanted no more part of this marriage, I didn't want anything to do with it. And I think about 3 weeks later, he came in and we had a talk, and to me it was about moving forward, what we're going to do with the house, this type of thing. Mm-hmm. And he managed as you say, to coerce me into taking him back. And now I look back thinking, oh my goodness, I was just so open and so vulnerable. And I must have thought myself really stupid at that time. But I decided to take him back. And after like 3 or 4 days, I'm like, get a grip of yourself, because you're absolutely right. It erodes your confidence, your self-esteem. It makes you feel, totally worthless.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's, probably, a caveat, just watch out for this coercive control coming back in to try, as you say, to hoover you back in, to suck you back into the relationship, thinking everything's going to be peachy. And I think that going back to something that's familiar rather than to moving towards something that's unfamiliar is a bit of a barrier as well. Sometimes you want to be okay, you might not want to be where you are, but at least you know how it is, rather
Yeah.
than moving to a situation that you don't know what it's going to be like. But
Hmm.
it's like you take that leap of faith, get yourself out your comfort zone, because it'll benefit you in the long run.
Exactly. And I took that leap, and I knew the universe would have my back no matter what. It is very hard for people to leave abusive relationships, and it's hard for people on the outside to understand why we stay. The unknown is very scary to just jump out there. Um, there's going to be financial situations, so you're going to wonder, how am I going to pay the bills? You don't want to break up a family. There's betrayal blindness, where we can't see, we don't want to admit that somebody could be so cruel and act the way they do. And actually, it takes seven attempts for people to finally leave abusive relationships. And actually, it's in the part where they finally do leave that the narcissist, it's the most dangerous part. And sometimes women are more likely to get killed when they have finally broken free, because the narcissist has gone from being able to control every aspect to now losing control.
Yeah.
So it infuriates them. It's a very dangerous period.
I think it's fearful for them as well, thinking that they've lost control of something. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think they're scared to lose control of everything around them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay,
Exactly.
so talk to us about how someone can navigate communication with a narcissist to minimize the harm to them.
So the first thing is, don't accept an invitation to an argument, because they will try to make you react, and they like positive or negative attention. It doesn't matter as long as it's attention. Try to remain don't let emotion get involved. Just try to remain businesslike, matter of fact. Like, don't give them what they want. Um, keep the conversations neutral, and use the I method. So instead of saying, you really made me angry, say, I was really angry when such and such. But however, they're not going to listen. They have no intentions of validating other people's perspective or whatever. Um, and I think the biggest one, when all of that fails, is to use the gray rock method, which is literally to make yourself as boring as a gray rock. So they see that fighting with you is futile, and they'll just get bored and they can move on to somebody else.
Yeah, so just don't react to it. Just respond, calmly.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And try to, when you can, use yes, no answers. If you're able to, I would go completely no contact. Don't talk to them on the phone, block them on social media. Just, if you have to be in contact because you have children together, I suggest using a family app like Our Family Wizard. And that's that you can only talk about your children. You write it down. It's all documented. There's a paper trail. The judges, the lawyers can see all these messages, and the messages can't be edited or deleted. And it's just a great way to not put yourself in a situation to be abused again with the conversation. That's the way to communicate. And you need to document everything, because you'll probably have to go back to court.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good advice. So from your personal journey then, what key pieces of wisdom or advice do you believe that listeners should take away from your experience?
First of all, I want them to know that it is not your fault. You were not crazy. You were not the one to blame. It is our birth-given right to live happy, peaceful lives and loved unconditionally. So my wisdom would be to get out of the relationship as soon as you can. I know it sounds easier said than done, but I promise you can do it. And especially for the children, do not ever stay for the kids, because they've been through the battle and you don't want them growing up to think that that's what love looks like, or that that's how you treat people. So yes, I would say get out safely. There's domestic violence shelters if you need to go to. Go stay with friends, but absolutely do not stay in this relationship, because you don't deserve to be treated like that. You don't want a life like that, and you don't want it to affect who you are.
Yeah, okay. And I talk a lot about awareness, because if you're not aware of a problem, it doesn't exist, basically. And that was what I discovered in my experience with a narcissist. So awareness is a big thing that I talk about. So, how it's very crucial, I believe, to be, to be aware and to recognize the red flags of, a toxic relationship. But can you recap some of those signs again?
So if somebody isn't like your cheerleader, and instead they get very upset at your accomplishments, if somebody tries to isolate you from your family and friends, if somebody isn't supportive of your dreams, if somebody starts to control you and wants to know where you are, or tells you who you're hanging out with, or wants you to constantly be in contact, if somebody starts to call you horrible names and try to make you feel bad about yourself and projects everything onto you, like we were talking about earlier, stonewalls you, doesn't even care about what you want, toxicity. And also trust your gut. If you feel like something is not right, your gut is 100% right all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So could you share some insights into the societal or cultural aspects that often overlook or normalize narcissistic behavior in relationships?
Well, there too, I don't think people really understand what narcissism is. So they can justify, oh, my partner had a bad day, or my partner is just stressed out, but I think the more we spread the word, the more educated people become, the more they will be able to see that narcissists are real, and it's far more dangerous and insidious than most people think it is.
Mm-hmm. How would you define a narcissist or narcissism, just in your experience?
A mental health condition.
Okay.
Where the person is always right, manipulative, controlling. They freak out at perceived slights and just have these outbursts of anger, and they're just not the greatest people to be.
Not stable. They won't take the blame for anything, and whatever it is, it's always somebody else's fault apart from them. They don't ever take responsibility or accountability for anything. They just blame. Yeah.
And they never ever say the words, I'm sorry, because in their mind, they've never done anything wrong.
Yeah. Agreed. Totally agreed. So in advocating for victims of narcissistic abuse then, what significant changes do you believe are necessary within our judicial systems or mental health institutions?
Again, education, because these guys are so manipulative. I can't say that word. Charming, and they wear the mask, and they're able a lot of the times in court to make us look like the unstable ones, And a lot of the times they use the children for pawns. Like my ex didn't even spend time with my son for the past couple of years, but he was trying to fight me in custody to hurt me. So the judges need to know how unstable narcissistic parents are and how they're not able to validate their children. They're not able to put their needs first because they can't. And this affects children because from 0 to 8 is the most important developmental stage. And it just can really mess up children. And mental health professions too need to know that these guys will manipulate words. And as a matter of fact, narcissists are the hardest clients to work with because they don't recognize they have a problem. It's like an addict, right? You can't get better unless you recognize you have a problem, you recognize it's having a negative effect, and you want to change. It's just very...
I find as well that, children are affected when, I suppose, your other half or your ex uses the children to talk negatively about you. I found that a lot. And please, if that ever happens, if your kids are telling you what their dad's saying, don't ever talk badly about their dad. Don't ever say things like that, because they come round really quickly and they realise what's happening. They realise what he's doing, but mum's not doing that.
Yeah.
So they try to get to you through the kids. That was my experience as well. And that's definitely not a good way to go. So that's just something else to be aware of.
Definitely, because it's very confusing for the children, and they should not be put in the middle because they've already been through the battle as well.
I know, bless them. They're the ones that suffer mostly, isn't it? Yeah. So what resources or support systems do you recommend for individuals currently in or recovering from narcissistic relationships?
Well, the most important thing is to talk about it. Maybe find a psychologist that specializes in narcissistic abuse. Definitely support groups really, really help, just to be around other people who understand they're going through the same thing. There's tons of books out there. There's tons of blogs, articles. I think the more we talk about it, it releases the trauma. Like, it cannot stay in here because it will harm us and keep us hyper vigilant. And also, I personally did something called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, where the therapist makes you follow their finger, and with this bilateral stimulation, our brains are able to focus on the emotions. So we totally submerge ourselves in the memories of the trauma, how we felt, what we saw, what we smelled. And the more we do this, the more desensitized we become. And we're able to sort of let go, because trauma stays in the body, and we're able to sort of scan our bodies and see where the trauma is. And as soon as we can heal with all this, our brains can return to normal function, and we're able to heal.
Okay. Oh, good to know. Good to know. So how do you envision society then can become more educated and proactive in addressing and preventing narcissistic abuse? How would you see that happening? Do you think there's a possibility? And how do you think we go about, getting that in place?
Actually, June 1st is Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day.
Oh.
Which is amazing. So even just that, like getting the word out, explaining exactly what it is. I'm going to do trainings with emergency responders to teach them what the red flags are. I'm doing the same with policemen. So I think the more people talk about it, give talks like on stages, do podcasts, all of that, I think more and more people are starting to catch on to what it is.
Okay. So what about the judicial system then? The courts, should they, make sentences, a little bit heavier to kind of try and prevent any kind of narcissistic abuse?
I would say, so judges mainly do 50-50 custody, which I think in normal cases is not the best for the children. So I think there should be less contact for the moment. I mean, I think parents should still be involved in children's lives. I think when the children are with the narcissist, the mother needs to document any single thing that the child has reported or has seen and keep all of that documented. So if need be, she can go back to court and have the parenting schedule modified, hopefully.
Okay. All right. So are there specific techniques or strategies that you've found effective in helping survivors rebuild their lives?
Again, talking about it, validating them, letting them know that they are worth it, helping them build skills, like maybe helping them if they need to find a place to live, or encouraging them to do yoga and being mindful, and just to know that slowly, little by little, they will be okay, they will heal, but they need to process the trauma. As uncomfortable as it is, they need to sit and hold space for their feelings, and then really just to bear witness to their story and let them feel like they can talk about it in a safe place.
Safe environment, yeah. And you brought up a good thing there when you said yoga is self-care, isn't it? You know, to teach them how to look after themselves, because they're probably, I mean, if they're a mother, they've got young kids, they're very, very busy in looking after everybody but themselves. And at this time when they're going through all this trauma and this shock, self-care is something that's really important for them.
Absolutely, because especially, yes, being a mother, working, but we've been so accustomed to just giving in to the narcissist's needs that we've completely put ourselves on the back burner. So we've completely lost any sort of self-care. So yes, going back now and really being graceful with ourselves and self-compassionate and doing things like yoga and going back out with friends and doing things that we gave up and doing things that help us feel better. So definitely self-care is of the utmost importance right now.
Yeah, and centering themselves, you know, and maybe a little bit of meditation every day just to learn to keep themselves calm. Yeah, that would go a long way, yeah.
Definitely.
So how can friends and family best support someone going through a breakup with a narcissist?
Just love them. Do not judge them, because it is not their experience to tell you, you know, you're stupid. Why don't you just get out? You deserve it. And just validate them. Let them cry on your shoulder. Just support them in any way the victim feels they need to be supportive, and just keep reminding them they're worth everything, and to love themselves, and just validate.
Lots of love and hugs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you could tell us about your book? Any other, you know, chapters that specifically stick out to you that you think would be really helpful for the viewers to understand?
I think my book has all the scary stories, the experiences I went through. The last couple of chapters are very educational. I mean, I think throughout it's very educational. I feel like once readers are done with my book, they will feel like they have a PhD in narcissistic personality abuse.
Okay.
If I can help just even one person with my book, then my mission has been completed.
Complete. I'm going to put some information on screen if you would like to tell us a little bit more about it.
I'm sorry, about what?
I've put some information on the screen. Can you see that?
Oh, yes.
Yes. You want to talk to us about that?
Yes. So I have affirmation cards coming out in the spring. And they're just reminding us to be grateful, because no matter what the situation, we can always find something to be grateful for. So just inspirational quotes. There's quotes, parts from my book, just to remind us to keep going, and we're going to be strong. And some days are better than others, some are not, but just words to just help us be mindful and grateful and know that we are healing.
Motivational quotes. I like that.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah. And they can find information at your website there?
Yes.
Okay. And your book also. Okay. Faith, it's been a wonderful conversation. I want to say thank you so much for, coming and being so open and vulnerable. It was wonderful to hear. And have a great conversation. You're such a beautiful, kind soul. And I just love that you're taking your experience and you've turned it round, and, taking that experience that you could have perceived as really horrible and gone in the completely opposite direction. And you've chosen to take it as an opportunity. And I think that is so, so courageous. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I know many other people will as well. And I hope your book sales go through the roof. I really hope that it reaches as many people as possible.
Thank you. And thank you so much for letting me come on here, giving me a platform to share my experience, because I think it's a very strong message, and hopefully we can spread the word as far as we can.
Yes, it's an excellent message, and thank you so, so much. And thank you to the viewers as well. Thank you for watching, whether it's live or on demand. And we will see you next week. Thank you, Faith.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sweetheart. Bye.
Bye.